Today on Inspired Money.
It's a lot of thought process that goes into managing debt so good debt doesn't become bad debt. Because once it becomes bad debt, it will take over your life and it will seep into every aspect of what goes on. And those that have debt that they're struggling with know exactly what I mean.
This is episode 130 with founder of the Tayne Law Group, Leslie H. Tayne. Welcome to Inspired Money. My name is Andy Wong, a managing partner at Runnymede Capital Management. Each week, we bring you an interesting person to help you get inspired, shift your perspectives on money, and achieve incredible things. From making it to giving it away, Inspired Money means making a difference, creating something bigger than oneself, and maybe, just maybe, making the world a better place. Thank you for joining me. Hey, Inspired Moneymaker. Welcome back. If this is your first time here, welcome. Today we're talking a four-letter word, debt. Some people say that our world is sinking in a sea of debt and that people refuse to talk about it. Today we're going to talk with Leslie Tayne. She's a lawyer with over 20 years experience. She founded the Tayne Law Group, a niche law firm that specializes in debt resolution services. And I'll even go as far to say that she loves talking about debt.
I have found my passion in debt, and I would never have guessed that. But the truth is, when I started and left that company, I didn't realize how passionate I would become about debt and debt resolution. And so it's a labor of love, and it has been a tremendous amount of work from leaving that and having nothing to building my business to where it is today and not earning any money or taking days off and having little kids home. And I would go home and put them to bed and go back to the office and building my processes and procedures and creating and establishing my integrity in my community, not just amongst my colleagues, but again, where you see me, where journalists call me and contact me, where I'm asked to be podcast guests. And I think that really goes down to the mission that I never lost sight of, which was that the client's needs and the client's concerns have to be at the forefront of the building this practice.
In this episode, you'll learn that good debt can turn into bad debt. And if that happens, hopefully you can turn that back into good debt. How Leslie talked to her kids early on about money in order to manage their expectations that helped prepare them to responsibly take on student debt before going to college, and the importance of keeping money and debt discussions positive. Now let's get inspired with Leslie Tayne. Leslie, welcome to Inspired Money. I'm so excited to have you on the show.
Thank you for having me today.
Let's jump right in. What's your earliest childhood memory of money?
I went to McDonald's and I wanted to order the medium. And I remember my mother saying to me, we can't afford that. You have to have the small. And I just couldn't understand, what that meant. What does that mean that I have to have this? I wanted the small. So remember when you're young, your thought process is one dimensional and you really don't understand like some of these external explanations. So my earliest memory is going to McDonald's and not being able to get what I wanted. So I think that that definitely hit a chord. While I couldn't explain it at the time, my feeling was even from that point on, that I didn't want to ever be in a position where I couldn't get what I wanted.
Interesting. And did that also give you some context into the value of money?
Again, I grew up in a different generation where, when I would ask my father about money, he would say, you have a roof over your head, right? And I would say, yes. And he said, so then don't ask questions. There was really, it was I think it was like the don't ask, don't tell generation of teaching money. And so while I know there were stressors in my parents', relationship related to money and certainly in the household, I was never really a part of that conversation and nor was I allowed to be a part of that. So it was definitely a different type of learning experience for me. And I think I needed to learn a lot of my experiences with money on my own. I just knew that money created independence for me. And I knew that money would give me freedom. I started working really, really early. I was babysitting, as early as 11 or 12 years old. And that's a young age. So that sort of gave me the insight into money the best way possible, was just my personal experience earning it.
Those are good lessons really early. Today, you have a successful law practice and you specialize in debt resolution and alternatives to filing for bankruptcy for consumers, small business owners, and professionals. That sounds like a really good niche to be in. And I would guess that that's a very good business decision. How did you find that niche?
I kind of stumbled onto it. Through law school, I believed my career path was going to be in public service law. I spent a lot of time working for the government at the district attorney, the attorney general's office, the county attorney's office. I thought I really had good experiences there, and I thought that's where I was headed. So my first job out of law school was being a public defender for parole violators. So I was basically a criminal defense attorney, and I was doing that for a short period of time. I had a very young child. I had a baby, an infant at the time. And I was very discouraged by the experience that I had and frustrated. I think that, coupled with the idea that, I really wanted to spend more time with my child, made it a difficult environment for me, or challenging at least. So I took a position as in-house counsel to a debt company, and that was how I stumbled into it. And it really was a part-time position at first, although very shortly after I took the position, it was not part-time. And I was working many, many, many hours a week. And subsequent to that, I thought, I believe that there's an opportunity here for me as an attorney and a law practice to open a firm that focuses and concentrates on helping consumers. At the time, there were a lot of different companies coming into the business, and we're talking almost 20 years ago now. So a lot of different companies and organizations coming into that debt arena. And I could see already from the perspective that I was sitting in this company that there were opportunities for those companies and individuals who were getting into the business to take advantage of consumers. And I was quite concerned at how the industry was moving. Fortunately, so was the government, and they changed a lot of the laws in the debt settlement and debt consolidation and the debt management business. But I opened my own practice and I forged ahead and rolled with the waves of the different experiences in that debt arena. And this is where I am today.
I love hearing that progression. When you were making those changes from public defender to the in-house counsel to opening up your own practice, as far as making the leap, how much was motivated by financial reasons versus the actual job and responsibility that you were doing?
Actually, none of it. I didn't go into it with the thought, I need to leave this business because I want to earn more money or I want to be more financially independent. Truthfully, I really left it because I felt that I didn't have a choice, that it was a dead end for me, and that I would have more freedom and independence, and I would be able to create the vision that I was starting to feel that was being so to speak, without a better word, tarnished in that environment. I really left because it made sense for me to do so. It was the right time. I had a little push. There was an opportunity for me to go, and I said, you know what, I'm out, and this is where I'm headed. I had no idea what I was in for, but I did it.
Talk about that environment a little bit. What was the vision that you saw, like you could do what you were doing, but do it better?
The opportunity for me, I felt, was that, again, in being able to see what was happening in that industry and them losing sight of the overall mission. And to me, again, starting out in public service, and that was my goal from law school when I was in law school, the goal in public service is to be a public servant and to serve people. And when I started out even in that in-house counsel position, my overall goal and intuition was to serve people. And when I started to see that vision not in alignment with my experiences, I felt that it made sense for me to go back to my roots, which was, I really want to serve people. I want to be able to make a difference. And I feel like I would make a difference on my own, where I can make the decisions and where I'd have more freedom to sculpt that environment. So I was certainly super young, and I really didn't even give it much thought, to tell you the truth. With all these positions, I didn't overthink it. I just did it. I went with my instinct. I went with my gut, and I said, I'm going to do this. And I left and I did it, and I just did it.
Well, it sounds like you've done very well for yourself. I think that you have 4 offices, maybe 5, 20 plus years of experience at the Tayne Law Group. What has that been like? It sounds like I see you everywhere, so you're working really hard. I hear you on podcasts. I see you in print. I know that you wrote a book. And all the while, it sounds like it's very customer centric. You're always focused on your clients.
That is my number one thought, is what can I do? The forefront of any decision making is, what is the customer's experience? What is my client going to think and feel as their experience here coming to me? People come to me in the most difficult and trying times of their lives. They are in debt. They're either fighting with their spouse or partners. They are having difficulty paying their bills. They are really struggling. And when you struggle financially, it really takes over your life emotionally, physically, and it's terribly draining. And I really have a soft spot for that, and an understanding at this point for those who are going through that. And I feel for my clients. And I always, even today, when I'm making decisions for my company, the forefront of my thought process really is, what's in the best interest of my clients? How can my clients get a really good experience here with me? How could they walk away saying that, you know what, debt, I was so afraid of going to an attorney. I was so afraid of dealing with my debt, but you know what? I feel so much better, and I had a really great experience. And, the tears of joy when I call clients and tell them they're done and we finished everything up makes everything worth it. But I think that, and it's interesting, I just had a lunch with a couple of other colleagues, and we were talking about the billing processes and whether the billing process is in the best interest of you or the billing process is in the best interest of the client. And there is a balance between managing your business and building your business and running a business and earning money, because we're all in the business of earning money, and balancing that with the client's needs. I realized that over time that instinctually, without thinking about it, the client is at the forefront of my concerns, and making sure that they get their goals met and that they have a good experience.
Let's talk a little bit about the current landscape, because it seems like in articles that I read, credit card debt seems to be getting bigger and bigger. Student loan debt certainly getting bigger and bigger. So there's good debt and there's bad debt. In your view, how should one be using debt?
All right. So that's a huge loaded question. How should you use debt? So there is good debt and bad debt out there, and good debt can become bad debt, and bad debt can become good debt. So obviously everybody starts out when they take on debt, not with the intention of not paying their creditors. Nobody says, okay, I'm going to buy this house and then I'm not going to pay for it, or I'm going to buy this car and then I'm not going to pay for it. Good debt is something that benefits you. So student loan is really good debt. It helps you build your future. You are investing in yourself as an individual, and you are creating opportunities for yourself by bettering and furthering your education so that you can be independent, financially independent, and build a career and a solid life for yourself. That's great debt to have. But the problem with student loan debt is that the thought process in taking the debt is often flawed, and that happens sometimes with other debts as well. But we'll talk about student loan debt because that's really at the forefront of everybody's mind and discussions today. So education in this country costs money. The question is, what is it going to cost you to get to where you want to be? And the decision making at 17, 18, 19, and 20 is limited because that individual really doesn't understand loans. They don't understand how to pay things back, and they don't understand the loan terminology. And it's not their fault, because they're young and they don't have that experience, and they live their whole lives with a parent or guardian who's paid for and taken care of everything. And now they want something, and what they want is an education, but what they're buying is an experience. So the question is what somebody's willing to pay for that experience. And many people, as you could see, are willing to pay a lot of money for that experience and that education. And that doesn't translate necessarily into being able to pay that back because you have to think about the return on the investment. So it's really a business decision. And student loans are taken not with the thought process that it's a business decision. They're taken with the idea that, I want something. So I have 5 kids in college, and I can tell you that when we were talking about college with all these kids, they were very enamored by the marketing and the experiences that they had on the days that they visited these schools. And yes, they know they can get the education in multiple different places, but their answers and their comments are things like, I can't really see myself here. Or I really want to go here. And you say, why do you really want to go here? And it's generally not because, generally, I say, it's not about the academic program, it's about the experience. And when you say to them that if this is what it's going to cost, there is a difficulty in understanding that they have to pay that back. So they say, so we'll just take loans, so I'll pay it back. And then you try to explain that how difficult it is to pay it back, but how could they really understand that? How could they possibly understand if they've never worked and paid back loans, debts, or anything else? They haven't even owned a car, and some of them, making these decisions before they could even vote. How do they really make these informed decisions? So they don't, but they have a parent or guardian guiding them, and the goal really is to help guide people when you're taking out loans and debts to make the best possible decision so that good debt doesn't turn into bad debt. And bad debt comes about when you can't pay the bill. And so many people, unfortunately, can't really pay the bill with student loans, but they also aren't willing to wait the amount of time it takes to pay it off. There's an expectation that that loan should be paid off quickly, and that's not realistic when it comes to the student loan situation. You took on $100,000, $200,000 worth of debt, but you don't have any income, and that's really a mortgage. And mortgages are designed to be paid back over 30 years. And a student loan debt at $100,000 or $200,000 is designed to be paid back over 20 or 30 years. So obviously, in the early part, you don't find people going around saying, hey, can you believe that I still owe $500,000 on my mortgage? I can't believe it. It's not right that they loaned me this money and I have this house that I can't pay for. You are paying it off. And that's the same thing you're doing with your education, except it's intangible. You're not living in it. You're not holding it, except the degree or the experience that it gives you. So the mindset on how to manage debt needs to be altered a little bit in the sense that, okay, I'm going to take this on. This is my plan. This is how I'm going to pay it back. And then it gets paid back over time. And that's the same thing with a house. The banks are pretty good about vetting out those who can't afford to buy houses. So if you earn $50,000 a year, you're not going to go buy $1 million house because no one's going to lend you the money to pay that because you can't afford it. But when you go to school and you earn no money, they're willing to lend you the money because at some point you will earn money and you will be able to pay it back. So there's not a filter on that end to manage how much debt you can take. It's the same with credit cards. If you have no income and you have no credit history, you're only going to get a limited amount of credit to use because you don't have a history. So it's up to you what you do with the amount of debt that's given to you. You can take and run with it and go on vacation and buy televisions, and you could buy material items, and you could run up the bill, and then you could be in a position where you don't pay. Or you could look at it like, all right, I have this credit card. I want to build my credit, or it's there for an emergency. And I know based on my budget, because I've written out the numbers of my income versus expenses, that I could spend up to $300 a month on my credit card and be able to pay that off comfortably. It's a lot of thought process that goes into managing debt so good debt doesn't become bad debt. Because once it becomes bad debt, it will take over your life and it will seep into every aspect of what goes on. And those that have debt that they're struggling with know exactly what I mean.
Well, kudos to you for having 5 children in college right now. That already blows my mind, just thinking about that. Given your unique perspectives into seeing how your clients run into trouble with debt and that they've had good debt turn into bad debt, I'm assuming that you were able to educate all 5 of your children to have the right mindset going into college?
Yes, with some resistance. So as most parents know, that the kids don't always want to listen, and they, lecturing them, especially this generation, lecturing them does not work at all. So I've tried to lead by more example with them. Although there have been times where they've said things to me like, oh, I wish you weren't a debt attorney. I'm so tired of hearing about budgeting or, things like that. But And I do really think about the purchases that we make, and I do discuss them and say, okay, so if this is what you want, is that something that you feel you could budget? But each one of the kids are different. They have different personalities and different mindsets. I have some that have listened and have gone off to state schools because they know they're going to go to graduate programs. So undergraduate, it made sense to minimize the expense. And I have others that once said to me, I don't really care what it costs. This is where I want to be. This is where I know I'm going to be happy, and I'll take out loans. To which I said, okay, well, that's a choice. And then when everybody moves into the city, when you graduate, you know that you'll probably end up living at home with me because you'll need to be able to pay these back. I know, but I don't care. And I respect that because at that point in time, they don't care. But at some point in time, they will care. And it's my job to try to guide them and explain the best I can and to the best of their ability to understand what it is that they can do with that. But I really started young. I started the discussions certainly about college when they were in middle school. And I started the discussions about money certainly much, much younger. Like, we don't go into a store and buy anything that we see whenever we want it. And that was always my policy. Or if I take them to see a program, a kids program on ice, like an Ice Capade type of program, or a program for kids, the circus or whatever it was, that doesn't mean that we buy a toy when we go there. And talking about the expectations ahead of time really helped manage that we're going to go to the store and we're going to buy food today. And yeah, you can hold this toy that we found, but we're not going to take that today. We can think about that for our birthday or for a holiday. And, with that said, those are ways to start managing the kids' expectations and introducing the thought process that we don't see it, like it, buy it, and that we think about our purchases before we make it. And also, one thing that I think is super important is the excluding of children in financial related discussions that are inappropriate for them to hear. So that's if you and your spouse are fighting over money, or if you are you think you're gonna, you have a problem paying your mortgages and things like that. Those type of discussions scare children and frighten them, and will create situations where they will fear money and fear debt and fear the management of money. So if you can, and I know how challenging that can be because you're home and it's emotional, but if you can, I recommend strongly that the age-appropriate discussions be positive. And if there are negative things going on, that you minimize it so that they're not frightened about it, and that money and the management of money and debt don't become something that is going to perpetuate in their future because they see that you're struggling with it. It's okay to struggle. It happens. It's normal. But you don't want to tell your 14-year-old or your 15-year-old that you can't pay the bills on the house and someone's going to come take the house away. You're going to frighten them.
That's too big.
Yeah, it's too heavy.
Coming up, we talk about where to start if you're in trouble with debt, renegotiating the terms of your loan, things to look out for when seeking help. All that and more right after this short break. The show notes for this episode can be found at inspiredmoney.fm/130. If you're listening in your car or wherever you are, check the show notes if you want to learn more about Leslie, her firm, and other things mentioned in this episode. It's time for the Runnymede Money Tip of the Week. Last week, I visited NBC at 30 Rock for a CNBC event with my friend Stacy. Stacy, if you're listening, thank you so much for hosting me. In turn, I've been visiting CNBC.com recently and found an article by Greg Iacurci. The title is Ponzi Schemes Hit Highest Level in a Decade, hinting next investor massacre may be near. Scary title aside, I thought that the content of this article was pretty interesting. If you don't remember, a Ponzi scheme is a form of a fraud that usually promises a high rate of return to investors but actually pays profits to earlier investors with funds from more recent investors. What does that mean? Well, sometimes what begins as an actual investment but isn't able to meet the returns promised to the investors turns into a Ponzi scheme where the fraudster takes new client money coming in to pay the original investors. That keeps up the illusion of a legitimate investment until it all comes crashing down. The biggest Ponzi scheme of all time was by Bernie Madoff, who orchestrated a $65 billion scam, affecting thousands of investors that came to light in 2008. This article warns that state and federal authorities uncovered 60, that's 60, alleged Ponzi schemes last year, with a total of $3.25 billion in investor funds. That's the largest amount of money from such scams since 2010, and it's significant because it more than doubled the amount from 2018. No matter how tempting, remember, if it sounds too good to be true, it probably is. Here are a few more things to keep in mind. Always make sure that your money is held at a legitimate bank or brokerage firm. Avoid brokers or financial advisors who are not registered with the U.S. Securities and Exchange Commission or the Financial Industry Regulatory Authority, that's also known as FINRA. I recommend searching the broker check database to check their registration status and for any complaints and problems. Finally, never make a check out directly to a broker or an advisor. It should always be made out to the custodian, for example, Fidelity, for the benefit of your account number that's in your name. Whether investors are letting down their guards because of the long bull market, or if it's because there's less regulation from the government, just be careful out there. Scams are on the rise. That's the Runnymede Money Tip of the Week. Inspired Money is brought to you by Runnymede Capital Management. We help you to plan, invest, and worry less. Do you have a financial question? If you do, go to inspiredmoney.fm/Andy, A-N-D-Y, to email me directly. I'd love to hear from you. You're listening to Inspired Money. I'm Andy Wong. It sounds like when it comes to personal finance and debt, it's really no different from diet. It's like you're trying to educate your kids on what's healthy food, what's not healthy food. You can't have sugar all the time, even though it tastes good. And it's about some planning and making good choices. One of the things that I hear people talk about frequently is that when it comes to debt, they have shame, so much so that they don't want to ask for help. So I'm curious, with the clients that you work with, by the time they come to you, is that a point of desperation?
So shame is a common feeling among people with debt because they feel embarrassed that they can't pay the bills. Either they've paid their bills their whole life, or, there's been shame, brought on to them by the idea that they're not doing the right thing. So there's an ethical or integrity piece of the puzzle. And so there, that shame and that embarrassment is an impediment to getting the best possible help. So I do see that often. And by the time they get to me, they are, really sad and upset about the situation that they're in. In my job, in my role, I am never judgmental about why somebody is in debt. And if you ever felt judged as a consumer or business person by somebody who's trying to help you, then that's not the right help. Debt happens. It's part of life. It just is. And it's how you manage it and what you do with it that creates the future for you. So it's like if you're sick and you have a cold and a cough, you go see a doctor. So if your finances are sick, you need to see somebody who can help you resolve them. So I don't see any shame in it. I see it's sometimes a little bit of a generational thing. Again, I told you the way I grew up, it was the don't ask, don't tell about, don't ask about the money and the finances. And I'm not going to tell you anything about it because it's not your business. So in that realm, if you grow up that way, then when you want it and you need help, you're going to feel uncomfortable asking it because you've been shot down as a child and you've been told that it's not really your business and don't talk about it. Here, it is a growing experience, and it is one where, when people come to me, they say, I wish I had met you so much earlier, a year earlier, 9 months earlier. And that's true, but you have to be emotionally and mentally ready to come to somebody like me and saying, you know what, I've tried this. I've looked at this from all angles. I'm struggling. I need to find the right person who's going to help me with this. And that's not an easy decision to make. And I'm totally empathetic to that.
Leslie, if there's a listener out there today who feels like he or she is in trouble with debt. What resources are there out there? What are the starting points for them to get help?
So the first starting point is awareness. The first one is to say, I am aware I have a problem. I am either going to run out of money, or I'm using my savings, or I've taken a bad loan that I'm having difficulty paying, or I just can't pay this, or the balances don't go down. That's awareness. So as soon as you start hearing that, or you're like, I don't want to go to the mailbox or in my inbox because I don't want to see a bill. As soon as those things happen, those are the red flags, the awareness piece of the puzzle. So once you become aware of it, you say, okay, so what's happening to me? Why can't I pay? What's happening with my budget? Do I feel like money's going to come in and it just hasn't come in yet? Or am I not getting anywhere here? And am I losing sleep over this or having trouble? So now you're having symptoms. So once the symptoms occur, the time is to start thinking about who is the right person to help me with the problem. So you can ask your accountant. You can ask an attorney friend. You can go online and start researching it. But again, you want to be really cautious about researching online, because depending on the search terms that you use, you'll come up with loans, you'll come up with personal loans, you'll come up with debt settlement, you'll come up with consumer credit counseling, and then you'll see advertisements come to you in the mail over and over and over again, offering you loans and offering you ways out of debt. And the question is, who can you trust? Who can you believe is going to do the right thing by you? And the number one piece of the puzzle I tell people is, when you speak to anybody, promises up front that they can definitively reduce your debt to certain numbers or in certain timeframes. It's impossible. So be aware of definitive statements. Your gut. Go with your gut. Are you not feeling comfortable with what the person is saying on the phone? Who are they? Where are they located? How long have they been in business? Are they licensed? And remember, debt is not debt in a bubble. Debt impacts your credit score. It impacts your taxes. It impacts your income. It impacts your lifestyle and your ability to make purchases. So that person that you're dealing with, that company that you're dealing with, has to see you as an individual and not a one-stop shop. You fit into, a nice piece of square puzzle here, and we'll get this done for you and move you on. Your debt is an individual. It's like your DNA. And even though you have a Citibank card and I have a Citibank card, that doesn't mean that if we both defaulted or had a problem paying, that Citibank is going to treat you the same way that they're treating me. And that goes because of your financial background, your credit score, your history, your income, your age, your location. So many different factors go into that. And so when I see people come to me and they say, well, I spoke to some company and they told me that they could definitely get this done within a certain amount of time, and this is the definitive payment, I know right away that that is not an accurate statement. So find the right person. Speak to a couple of different people. Don't be quick to pull the trigger. You got into debt. It took a little while to get into debt. Take your time to find the right people that help you. Money up front. Anybody who wants money up front or takes all their fees before they do any work for you, that's a huge red flag. And that would be one that I would stay away from or recommend staying away from.
When a prospect comes to you, what happens and what's a realistic expectation or outcome?
The realistic expectation is that I'm going to do the best I can for you, and I will be with you every step of the way. And there are a couple promises that I can make and promises I can't. One is, like I said, I'm going to do the best job I can for you. I will communicate with you and be there every step of the way. The things that I can't promise and where I set expectations are, I want no surprises. I do not want a client who comes through the process to say, Leslie didn't tell me this was going to happen. So we discuss things like lawsuits. We discuss the impact on your credit. We discuss what's called a 1099 forgiveness of debt form, where you may have an impact, a taxable impact, and how to minimize that taxable impact. So there are so many prongs to this process. And it's not just about giving you a number and telling you this is what you should pay and this is the number I'm going to get you out of debt. It's about how can I take you to achieve your financial goals, from one step to the next. What are your goals? What is it that you need to achieve? How is it going to impact your family and your business? So expectations early on are set with my clients, so there's no surprises. They know exactly what to expect. I can generally predict what certain creditors are going to do. And I say generally because creditors change their parameters like the wind. And there's no way for me to know what American Express is going to do with your file today versus what they're going to do in 6 months from now when we're ready to negotiate a resolution with them. So, managing those expectations are super important because we want clients to understand that we have a strategy and we have a process, and we understand that process well enough to know what we can and cannot promise.
What are some of the possible outcomes? Is one of them to negotiate a lower amount so that the debt can be paid off?
Sure. Actually, our ultimate goal is to reduce the principal debt and take the interest to zero. So that is the ultimate goal here with clients, is to give some breathing room so that they can catch up on their day-to-day expenses, reduce their monthly payment that's going out, so reduce their cash outlay, protect their assets, whatever assets they have, their home, their businesses, bank accounts, things like that, their income, and also get to a point where we can renegotiate the terms of the agreement with a creditor to reduce what they're paying out and pay them off interest-free for less than what they owe so that we can get them out of debt faster.
I see, because usually once someone's in trouble, that amounts to a lot of interest.
It can. The interest does accumulate. I tell clients, really don't worry so much about the interest at this point in time. That's something that we'll be able to negotiate or as part of the negotiation. So it does amount to a lot of interest. Your default interest rates can be anywhere from 20 to 26%, depending on the card and the type of debt that you have. So, and there are not only default rates, but default charges depending on the type of loan you have as well. So it does add up and it grows, but it's not an overall concern for me. My biggest concern is making sure we come up with a budget that makes sense so that they can get some breathing room, a little, stress relief, and I'll negotiate it down.
And how do you charge?
So we work off of a percentage of the debt. So we work off of, we've basically flat rate it so that we don't work on an hourly basis, so clients can feel that they have an opportunity and an open door policy to call us as often as they like. We definitely love communication. I'm a tremendous communicator. So I encourage clients to call us as often as they like, which is kind of counter to what most attorneys do. Most attorneys don't want you to call. That's why they're charging by the hour, although they do want you to call so they could bill, but there is a deterrent when you're being billed by the hour. So my clients are not in a position to be able to afford my hourly rates, and so that doesn't make sense. So a percentage and a flat rate make the most sense, and allowing clients the feeling that I'm completely accessible, as is my staff, for them to be with them, to answer questions about anything finance related, or even if you just want to have a conversation. I have clients that either live alone or are older, or they're having difficulty communicating with their significant others about the stress that they're under. So it's super important for us and for me, for clients to feel that, I'm not the typical attorney and that the program and the process is really supportive.
Well, it sounds like you're doing good work and helping people to get out of trouble. I know that you have a healthy, growing business. You have multiple offices. Based on articles that I read, it seems to me that the debt problem in America is getting worse and not better. Is that true? And what can we do? We want your business to continue to thrive, but what can we do to help people so that fewer people need your help?
I think that the debt numbers are larger than they have ever been, and that happens. There's more and more opportunities for spending and more opportunities for credit for spending. So, and I think that debt number has risen a lot, mostly because of the student loan epidemic. But the reality is that you yourself can manage your debts well by really budgeting. And I understand everybody uses the word budget, and it's such like a dirty term because people shy away from it and they're like, oh, budgeting, I hate it. I hated math in school and I don't want to do it. And I don't want to look at what I don't have. But honestly, you have to be aware of your finances in order to manage them. And that means whether you have a lot of money or a little bit of money. And I am a super positive individual, and I'm big on the what you put out is what you get back. So energetically, I believe strongly in being very positive about debt. When I pay my bills, I'm very thankful. I put no negative energy onto a bill paying and budgeting. I look at it as a positive experience and something that I'm learning from and growing with. And, it's really, really feels great when you can pay something off, when you have paid down your bills. Listen, we all have to charge things and we all have to pay for things that, we may not have the cash or not want to use the cash. And at times, sometimes during the years, you have more debt than at other times. And that's normal. And that's called the cycle of life when it comes to finances. It's the same in business. It goes up, it goes down. But the key is being able to manage it so that you are understanding where your money is going. So long as you have an understanding where the money is going, you'll be able to manage and be able to say, no, I can't afford something, or yes, I can afford something, or I'm going to have to build money to be able to afford that, whatever that is. And it doesn't matter what you want. It could be completely ridiculous. It could be jewelry. It could be vacations. It could be whatever it is that you want. You're entitled to it, and buy it. Buy whatever makes you happy within your budget. And so one of the things I notice about clients when they come to me and I ask them questions about their mortgages or debts is that they can't answer the question. They can't tell me if they have a federal or private student loan. They can't tell me the actual payment that they make a month, how much their taxes are. They can't read the statements, the escrow statements that come. They can't read the credit reports. So to get ahead and to be educated, you have to be able to read and understand what all these numbers mean. And it may not come naturally to you. And in fact, I'll give you a secret. Math did not come naturally to me in school at all. And yet today I'm a finance attorney and I can do all these numbers in my head and keep all the numbers straight. It just took a lot of training over the years to really, really understand numbers and do it on a regular basis, not budgeting once a year or every few months. That's not going to train you. Listen, most people learned computers just by doing. We didn't take computer courses, but we're on the computer every single day learning how to use it. It's the same thing with money management. Every single day, if you're managing your money and you're paying attention to it and you're using your apps, or I'm a little old school and I use a desk calendar still, so that it's fail safe, meaning like
it won't crash.
Right, it doesn't crash unless somebody walked away with my desk calendar. Then they'd know when my bills are due. So I use a desk calendar and I put on the calendar exactly when my bills are due. So in my mind, I'm able to see when the bills are due. And because I write it down month to month, I know exactly how much is due, when it's due. So I'm able to quickly go and see, okay, I want to make this purchase. Does this purchase make sense? All the apps that are out there show you what you've spent to date from your bank account to your credit cards, even the balances that are available on those cards and your credit. So it really isn't a secret what's available to you to spend. It's a matter of whether you can control that enough to reach your goals. And it does take self-control. Hey, my home and my business are in a very expensive environment. I'm in the tri-state area, and that's an expensive place to raise a family and grow a business and live. And that's challenging in and of itself. And there are material items that I really want, but that doesn't mean that I'm just going to, because I have the available credit, that I'm just going to go out and buy them. I want to make good decisions because this is it's not a sprint, it's a marathon. And we have a long way to go with our money. To the day we die, we're going to be managing money. So it's best to try to make friends with the process early on so that you can manage it long term, because the management of your money and finances is never going away until you die.
Yes, it goes back to the word that you used earlier, awareness. You have to be aware of your surroundings, of where your money is going, and that goes a really long way. Leslie, I'd like to ask all the Inspired Money guests, how do you define success?
Success to me is defined by happiness. So I absolutely love what I do. I am super happy with my career and the places that it's taken me and the experiences that I've had. I've grown as an individual, and so my success is defined by happiness.
Well, thank you so much. Thanks for telling us about your story and about your practice, how you're helping people. I appreciate you taking us through good debt, that turns to bad debt, and hopefully, with your help, it turns back to good debt. Can you tell the Inspired Money listener where they can follow you, learn more about your firm, and just learn more in general?
Absolutely. So you can find me certainly on the internet, Twitter and LinkedIn at Leslie H. Tayne, ESQ. That's Tayne. Twitter, Facebook, and Instagram at Tayne Law Group. Or on, you can just Google my name or put it into a search engine, or TayneLaw.com.
Yes, I think that they will find you because you are everywhere. Thanks so much, Leslie.
Thank you so much for having me.
So what was your favorite Inspired Money moment? My favorite Inspired Money moment this week was when Leslie said that debt happens. It's part of life. It's how you manage it and what you do with it that counts. If you need help, seek help from someone. Don't be afraid to talk about money and debt, because talking about it is the first step so that you can strategize and address the problem head on. If you had a different favorite Inspired Money moment or thoughts on today's topic, message me on Instagram at inspiredmoney.fm. That's instagram.com/inspiredmoney.fm. If you enjoyed today's episode, please do me a favor and share it with a friend, or post it to social media and tag a friend. For that, I thank you. Thanks for joining us today. If you're not yet subscribed, I hope that you'll do that right now wherever you're listening so that you don't miss next week's episode. I look forward to seeing you then. The music you're listening to right now and all other music on today's show is by the amazing Jim Kimo West. Have an inspired week and do something that scares you, because that's where the magic happens.